welcome to Talking Materials Handling. In each episode, you'll hear from the thought leaders who are shaping what happens inside the four walls of the distribution center. We'll cover the gamut, from automation and robots to software and the next gen technologies that are enabling the workforce of tomorrow. This podcast is hosted by Bob Treblecock, the executive editor of Modern Materials Handling. Remember that Bob welcomes your comments. Now, to today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of Talking Materials Handling, putting tomorrow's automation to work today. I'm Bob Treblecock, and joining me today is Jordan Frank. Jordan is the Executive Vice President and a co-founder of Zion Solutions Group. Jordan, welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation about automation. This is one in a series of podcasts I've been recording to highlight content from NextGen 2023, the conference that I put on under the SCMR Supply Chain Management Review banner. Last year, Zion Solutions Group sponsored the NextGen Solutions Group Awards. In those, we recognize companies that are taking their customers' supply chains and operations to the next level, and we were really appreciative of their support. Given Zion's work with next-gen warehouse automation, this is really both the perfect and a timely topic. So Jordan, to kick it off, first, tell us briefly about Zion Solutions Group. You know, your company is relatively new, but I know that you and your team have a lot of experience in warehouse automation.
Yeah, we do, and happy to talk about it here. But I'm first going to just talk about the Next Gen conference and just tell you how much we appreciate that conference and how much learning we had and the people there. We've referenced that conference numerous times over the last probably 6 months or 4 months, however long ago that it was that we went. But just want to tell you, great conference, really enjoyed ourselves, and looking forward to continue to be a part of Next Gen.
That was an unsolicited plug, by the way.
Yeah,
So,
it was.
so,
It was
so
really
thank you, thank you for that. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, hey, look, that's one of our pillars is transparency. So I thought I'd just be honest with you and tell you our thoughts. But yeah, you're right. So Zion Solutions Group, we are a newer company. We're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. We are a full service systems integrator, meaning that we employ people that look at data that help design facilities and warehouses, specifically the distribution center. We have numerous different partners across the industry and across the world. We partner with those different customers, focused on technology, conveyance, sortation, racking, whatever it may be. And we really just bring all those together to give you a seamless solution or to solve that unique problem. We do have a lot of experience. The 4 co-founders of Zion Solutions Group is myself, Drew Eubank, Jim Shaw, and Chuck Frank. And combined, there's probably close to 100 years of experience within the industry from all different levels. We have, as an example, Drew spent time in operations and consulting. Jimmy spent time in operations and integration, and Chuck and myself, it's really all that we've done. Now, Chuck is my father. He's got some years on me, but collectively we come from diverse backgrounds, but really feel like we never felt like Zion Solutions Group was a startup. We just felt like it was a new company in an industry that we call home, and we're excited to continue working with our great business partners and customers.
Jordan, I just want to ask you to expound on one other thing, because in your previous company, whenever I would hear about robotics implementations, it was typically your team doing
Yep.
that. You guys have a lot of, and I know we're going to talk about this more in depth later. So just briefly, just tell us a little bit about your experience with robotics.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. I would say, Bob, that robotics and software are 2 of my passion and our team's passions. And we really saw a need probably 6 or 7 years ago to start investing our time and resources into understanding the various different technologies that were available in the marketplace. And we took time to understand, why aren't they more successful? And what we really found is that you had to have a very good focus on that technology. And the technology that we really focused on at our previous employer was Exotech. When we started with Exotech and we introduced it to our customers, they would normally ask, never heard of it. What's that? And I think most people by now know who Exotech is and the product they have in their SkyPod system. So we invested not only our resources, but time. We developed an innovation lab. We put a pilot system in, and we started working with our different customers to understand the different use cases that could come about when looking at goods to person technology. We took it one step further and employed our own robotic systems engineers, not only understand how the system worked, but how you go about mapping the robots, how you service the robots. And we really cut our teeth with Exotech and their goods to person system. We had success with that. And that just kind of lit a flame under all of us of just, man, there is a lot of great technology and great partners out there. And let's continue to do more of that.
Great. So I'm going to come back to robots in a few minutes, but I just wanted to sort of set the stage for that. So
Yep.
first, thank you for the shout out for NextGen. At this year's conference, we had a lot of industry leaders, including a number who were talking about transformations they're making in their facilities. Those companies included Gap, who's doing a lot with robots, including Exotech, Carhartt, which is using Locus, Macy's is using AutoStore and a pouch system. Cardinal Health is using AutoStore. Medline is using AutoStore and piece picking robots. And then with Pitney Bowes, pure parcel sortation, but using several different robotic technologies to do that. They were all bringing in a bunch of automation technologies to transform their warehouses. When you think about the companies you're talking to or the projects you're working on, what's driving them to automate?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it really has a lot of different answers depending on who you ask. And I think an answer you would get commonly is labor reduction. And while that is certainly a part of it, I don't know that for us that is the main reason driving people to automation. I think what we are seeing, and there's different examples you mentioned, is Gap and Carhartt and Cardinal Health. They're employing multiple different technologies to solve multiple different problems, whether
Right.
it be unit sortation with the robotics, whether it be piece picking, whether it be goods to person, whether it be ASRS, they're all using those in a different way. And I think what it comes down to is people really want a sustainable and confident solution that they know that can produce the results time in and time out. And what I mean by that is that we're seeing situations where, especially in e-commerce, when you have these great fluctuations from average to peak and you flood your facility with temporary workers, it's really hard to know what kind of quality of work you're going to get, what kind of turnover you're going to get, and it is really expensive. So I think what we're finding with these companies is they're like, I just want a system that I can put in that's redeployable, that doesn't have to be overly complicated, that allows me to do the same processes day in, day out, producing the volume that they need to produce to ultimately service their end customers, right? And I also think another reason that people are getting more and more interested in that automation and leaning towards it is if you think about TVs and the plasma TV and the cost of a plasma TV years ago, it was really expensive. But what we found is through time and innovation, pricing starting to come down. And that includes the robotics and technology in our industry. So now more than ever, technology is continuing to be almost a requirement and a lot of different distribution centers we're looking at in some way or form. We will be one of the first to tell somebody if automation is needed or isn't needed. It's not our only trick up our sleeve, right? It's certainly a arrow we have in our quiver, but we always look out for what's best for that customer. And a lot of times that conversation starts with, what do I need to automate? And we say, well, where's your pain? And is there a deployable solution that has moderate risk, but not aggressive risk that we can put in? So really the conversation starts with the industry's flooded with technology right now. There's a lot of really good technology, but people at the end of the day just want a process they can count on, that they can understand, and they know they can redeploy as their business continues to grow.
Jordan, you mentioned something kind of interesting. I'd just like to explore a little bit more, which was, historically, automation was labor reduction, right? FTEs. How many FTEs can I do without? Are you finding that conversation is different today? Because you also used the peak season, you're going to bring in the temps. And a lot of people I'm talking to are saying, they wanted to keep their core workforce. They weren't looking to get rid of people. They're trying to bring in automation to support the people they could count on, and then either reduce the number of temporaries they might need, or I'm going to use a math example. I'm just kind of making it up. If my business grows by 25%, maybe I only have to increase my workforce by 5% rather than 25%. In other words, they can grow with the technology without adding as much people in the future. And then, of course, there's the third shift because everybody says they can't get anybody to work on the third shift.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, so I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? I mean, typically growth of a company has had a linear growth from an FTE standpoint, and we're finding that automation can make that conversation switch. And it's no longer
Mhm.
about, okay, if I grow by 2x, I need to increase my workforce by 2x. It's to your point, Bob, is hey, I've got my core tech, my core people. What do I need to grow by in order to continue to hit that volume? But what we're also having conversations with is how do I supplement my people? I mean, I think our industry, and I think all industries are becoming more and more focused on their culture, their people, their team, and thinking about coming in and replacing everybody with technology isn't a lot of our customers' main priority. Yeah, they want a return on the investment they have to make in that automation, but they also want to have a better working environment for the people that are coming in to work in their facility. Whether it be the excitement of working with robotics, whether it be the reducing the amount of steps they have to take in a day that just causes exhaustion and turnover. But yeah, we are seeing that conversation switch. I can't say that FTE savings isn't still a critical factor of a return when looking at automation, but we're not seeing it necessarily as the main and only priority when talking around what to automate.
You mentioned, I can't remember if you used the phrase tried and true, but you'd said that, people, they want a system they can understand, a system they can grow with, a system they can count on. So, we still have demand. I've just done some stories for the tried and true, ASR systems, mini load, shuttles, conveyor and sortation, pick to light, all of those things. And then on the other side, the new technologies, AMRs, piece picking robots, pocket sorters. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had recently with companies that hope to compete with AutoStore, new takes on that type of technology. So let's break them down. Let's start with the tried and true. What are the applications or situations where people are turning to, ASRS systems, mini load, shuttles, conveyors, putting in, a multi-level pick module with lights or some other, enabling technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple different applications when we see the tried and true. And I'll make the bold statement that conveyor and traditional sortation, when you think about narrow belt sortation, shoe sorters, tilt tray sorters, cross belt sorters, are going to be around for a very long time. And the reason is while some people may look at them as inflexible because you have to bolt it to the ground, at the end of the day, they serve a very good purpose, which is to transport cartons or totes from or bags, which we're seeing more of, from point A to point B. And when you get into high volume scenarios, I don't believe that the robotics are there yet. If you think about the fact that you've got a centralized pack area and you need to produce 60 to 80 cartons a minute that then need to go over to either a VAS area or the outbound sortation area, or an LTL area, wherever it may need to go, it's all coming from one kind of funnel. And technology and robotics aren't quite there yet with the ability to come to that funnel and then bring it out to all those different destinations. They're getting there, but they're not there yet. And when it comes to the ASRS and it comes to the mini loads and it comes to the pick modules, we're seeing a lot of those once again in those businesses that have somewhat of a repeatable pattern. In other words, they've got a specific SKU set, they've got a specific volume. There's kind of order profiles that profile them into, hey, a shuttle paired with a unit sorter may be the best option, not only from a throughput standpoint, but from a cost standpoint. Because you mentioned the AutoStore, Bob, and AutoStore, High Robotics, Exotech, Adverb has several different shuttles. They're all great technologies. But when you get into a low SKU set or a medium SKU set with a high volume, or even a high SKU set with a high volume, those technologies can tend to be on the higher end of cost. And people just may not have the appetite to spend that kind of money. So that tried and true, I think, is going to remain a big factor of distribution centers for many years to come.
Well, it's, as exciting as it is to write about robotics, the go-to solution I still see more and more, like when people call us to write about their facilities, is a multi-level pick module, going to a pack station, right? Or maybe going to, a pack sortation or pack module, but it's still, pick to a tote, put the tote on a conveyor, route the conveyor through the pick module, send it on to packing.
Right.
Um, so let's talk about some of those next gen
Well,
technologies
Bob,
that.
let me comment on that
Oh,
really quick, if you don't
yeah,
mind,
sure,
because
absolutely.
one other point, and I think this is a good point, is we see the same thing. And I, at one point in my career, didn't think we would ever look at another pick module, but we do. And the main reason for that is when you think about those customers that don't have that predictable demand, what a pick module does allow you to do, or a pick area with locus, whatever it may be, it does allow you to still throw people at it. And what I mean by that is, if you're getting into those peak scenarios, some people are like, hey, let's build that church for Easter Sunday and put in all that technology, but most don't. And they want the ability to get through their 85th percentile or whatever it may be from an outbound automation standpoint. But when it comes to the pick, which is where we find the vast majority of technology is focused, robotics don't always allow you to just throw people at it. You've got to have the robots, you've got to have the pick stations, you have to have the conveyor. So that is one other area, especially in the e-commerce and apparel side of things, that we see still being. It's still a problem that I don't know is fully solved by automation. Is how do you handle those average to peak ratios if you can't throw people at it? So just another point of where we see that tried and true.
Oh, perfect. So let's talk about the other side, the robotics, for an instance. I went back to see when I first visited Quiet Logistics, which developed Locus Robotics. It was back in 2014. And I first wrote about it, I think, in 2015 when they did a thing with DHL. So that's 10 years now, hard to imagine. And you can go back almost 20 years to the introduction of Kiva. Um, but the technology is still, I think, emerging, even when you're talking about, AMRs. So let's talk a little bit about the various robotic types, and while you assess their evolution, they're sort of ready for prime time. Let's start with all those different various kind of AMRs. What's happening in that space? How evolved is it, and then where's it kind of going as you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think with AMRs, I think there was a really big passion to start. You talk about Kiva and you talk about Locust, and what do they help? Well, they help supplement people, make them more productive.
Right.
Take away the steps, but do it in a seamless way, whether it be a brownfield or a greenfield. And I think what it came down to, and maybe it was a miss early on, is the complexity of the software involved to really have a large fleet of robots out in the field and be able to manage the different tasks and priorities that you have coming in to keep those people productive. So I think with those companies, we've seen a lot of improvement of software over the years, which is, for Locus, I spoke with them a couple weeks ago at a trade show and said, look, you guys are becoming synonymous with pick assisted robotics. It's Locus, right? And I said,
Right.
kudos to you guys. But I think the different types of AMRs that we're seeing is we had some early success with pallet movement AMRs, which is just simple point A to point B. Take away those deadhead runs with the fork truck operator when they go down to the outbound dock and they come back empty handed. It's like, hey, why not have a robot do that? So we are seeing opportunities for things like trash removal and pallet movement, tote return, utilizing more of a pallet AMR. We do see a lot of opportunity and a lot of distribution centers with that pick assisted AMR, like Locus, like a Fetch, or like a Six Rivers, which is now part of the Ocado group. And then we're
Right.
seeing more and more, depending on how technical you are with your AMR, we are seeing AMRs brought into the goods to person environment, right? Some of them aren't true AMRs, meaning they don't have obstacle detection or obstacle rerouting. They kind of follow a path and they can stop. But we're seeing those same robots being used in various different ways. It started with the pick, then it turned into pallets. Now it's just what else can we do in the facility? So we're seeing it continue to expand. We see a lot of opportunity for AMRs. We have several partners that have some pretty cool things in the works.
Do you see an analogy I've used when I do a present? We do a survey of the robotics industry every year. We just did 2024. And an analogy I've often used is when I first started writing about voice technology, however many years ago that was, it was primarily a picking technology, and it was expensive and it didn't always work great. But where people used it was picking. And as the technology improved and as people got, experience with voice, they started looking at, well, what else could I do with voice? So like one of the earlies was, turning it into multimodal. Well, could I combine it with a barcode scanner or lights or something like that? And then it was, well, could I do cycle counting? I'm going to go to the bin anyway. Could I also do cycle counting? And then, could I do put away? Could I do, retrieval? Could I do receiving? Could I do shipping? So like they made this investment in voice to do picking, and then over time, as the technology got better, they started looking at other processes they could enable with voice. It sounds like from your last answer, you're seeing something similar, with AMRs, where it might have started with somebody putting a tote, one tote on an AMR to go to a pick location, to now trying to use that technology, in different ways. Do you see that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, I think we see a lot of the successful robotic OEMs that are in the market. If you look at what they set out to solve day one, some of them are solving that problem. But what I would tell you is the most successful ones that are out there have realized along the way, they've used any of the failures they've had as a learning exercise and challenged themselves to say, okay, well, how do we prevent that from happening again? Or how do we change our main focus or our mission to solve maybe a different problem, leveraging the software we've developed or the hardware that we've developed? So what we've seen is that those companies that are very successful in the industry are not only, you know, open to taking on challenges, they're looking for those challenges to solve. So I think we'll continue to see these robotic companies continue to evolve with the industry into several different areas. But yes, to answer your question, I think these companies have to be open to moving along with the evolution. They have to be okay with change, but leveraging the investments they've made to continue to adapt and evolve and become better rather than saying, hey, we only do this and this is all we're ever going to do.
Piece picking robotic arms have been slower to catch on, and I think they've had more challenges in terms of speed and things like that. When you look at that market, where are we today?
Yeah, I think there's several different companies out there that are doing piece picking fairly well. But what I think it comes down to is when you think around the technologies we've talked about so far, AMRs, ASRS, conveyors, sorters, goods to person, there's not a lot of exception handling they have to do. And what I mean by that is they're built to handle a specific size tote, a specific size pallet, or they'll have some sort of hook on there that they can get or a magnet, whatever it may be. Piece picking is one of the most difficult problems to solve because if I present a tote and I'm expecting a unit to be centralized in that tote and I find that it's in the corner, well, now I got to solve for that, right? And I have to be able to see that with vision software and figure out how to get to that product. I also have to have products that I can grasp. You know, a good example is think about a hat. You know, people look at a hat, a normal baseball hat, and they think, well, hey, that's no problem. Well, what's in a hat? There's little holes. Those little holes prevent me from using air to grasp that hat. You don't really think about that until you have one in front of you and you're trying to test it and you realize you can't get solid suction to lift it up. So all those, you think about all the different SKUs and materials that are out there in the world and how difficult it would be to make a technology that could handle not all of them, but the majority of them. It's a really big challenge. The other piece that it comes down to is barcodes. You know, if I'm doing true piece picking, and let's say I want to automate a put wall, you know, Covariant has a version of this
Yeah.
with their product. They have to be able to pick up that unit and now scan it. Well, what happens if I pick up that unit and my end effector is on the barcode? Well, now I can't scan it. So we have seen other technologies like Plus One Robotics who have embraced the change or the exception that they're going to face, and they have solves for that exception. But I think the speed isn't there. I think not being able to handle all the different SKU sets is a challenge. Um, and I think it's just really just that exception just causes people pause. We have seen a lot of success on induction. If I'm just taking an item and I'm putting it onto a cross belt sorter, tilt tray sorter, wherever that is, there's a
Right.
really value opportunity there. But that piece picking is just a difficult problem to solve.
We're seeing the same thing, and even folks who have put in piece picking arms. I know Medline put one in on their auto store, and Geodis just rolled out piece picking arm on an auto store, but they have, like, Geodis has, I think, 30 workstations, and 4 or 5 of them have a robotic arm,
Right.
and it's like limited SKUs, going into there. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a high level of automation. What's the biggest challenge, and is that challenge different if I'm starting from scratch with a greenfield versus adding automation to an existing facility?
Yeah, some of the biggest challenges, I'll start there when you bring in a high level of automation. One point, just to kind of recap it, is what we talked about earlier is solving for that average to peak and what's the right level of automation and how much investment do I have, right? The other challenges come down to how much volume are you really trying to process, because the higher your volume, the more opportunity you have, and the lower the volume, it's a little bit more challenging. But really what we've seen is it's the ongoing maintenance and support, it's the software to drive the facility, it's looking at what the WMS wants to handle versus what the WES wants to handle. And when you think about integrating multiple different technologies into one singular solution, you have to ask yourself, is there a software that can govern all those different technologies that's on the floor, right? And if you can't, how do you properly level load? How do you make sure that you can solve for that exception? That if an aisle goes down of an ASRS, or if you have a piece picking arm and it doesn't work, or if you have an automated packaging technology that's supposed to replace 7 or 8 packers and it goes down. So I think solving for all those exceptions and identifying those risks is one of the challenges of implementing high level automation. I wouldn't say it's impossible to solve. It just takes time to understand how much risk is that potential user willing to take on, what's their comfort level, what's their software capabilities, and ultimately, how many different processes or exceptions do I have to solve for? And that can help lead us to the different types of technology to suggest. Now, when it comes to greenfield versus brownfield, my quick answer would be yes. They're definitely different challenges, right? A greenfield kind of gives you that perfect box that you can fill and you can kind of morph and develop the solution around the software, around the technology. A brownfield requires you to really adapt to the existing environment, which might be limited clear height, it might be a limited square footage, and you really have to adhere to the processes already in place. So, as an example, if I have a oversized pick area and I have, let's call it a conveyable pick area, and I want to use the technology to solve that kind of each pick or conveyable area, well, in the process today, there may not be any consolidation required. You might go out, you might be picking to a pallet, you pick your big product, you bring it over to let's say it's just bin shelving today, and you put it on the pallet and it goes to the dock. Well, now if I introduce technology to that each pick, now I've got to figure out how do I consolidate that order, right? So understanding the different processes in place, what's available to change, what's required to be the same, can create a whole different set of challenges when you're looking at a brownfield versus a greenfield.
Modex is coming up in about 3 weeks out, based on the day that you and I are recording. I'm sure you go to other shows, talk to solution providers and startups. Where do you see our industry heading, even if the solutions under development aren't ready for prime time now? Where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit on it pretty hard. I think a lot of people are trying to solve for any area that you have manipulation of a unit. So what I really mean by that is that piece picking. It's that packing process. It's those areas that people really haven't spent a lot of time focused. Everyone's been so excited to say, how do I cube this building effectively? How do I bring product to the person? Right? Well, I think that was a shift in our industry, and it came pretty quick. I mean, yeah, AutoStore's been around for a while, but really goods to person technology took off probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it's been a trend, and you're seeing it in more and more and more places. But I think we're going to see another trend that's going to say, well, how do I change the process so that when I go to pick or when I go to pack, it's just a process that's not quite a lights out facility, but I don't have all these manual steps along the way. If you think about goods to person, you still have people that are out getting those cartons or pallets to replenish the system. You still mainly have people that are then picking the eaches out, typically into a tote. You then still have people that are taking that tote and they're putting it into an outbound carton and they're putting it onto that conveyor. So what our industry, I think, is going to try to solve, and I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I just know that it's a focus. Is how do we shake up that process? Instead of having that kind of linear flow, what can we do differently to allow us to have a seamless process where that one person, that is my replenisher, that is my picker, that is my packer, whatever it may be, but it's going to be about reducing the touches in the facility. That's a trend that we're going to see, and you're going to see different automation companies expanding their portfolio to offer a seamless solution. I think we've seen it with Geek Plus. I think we're seeing it with Adverb, and we're seeing it with others that they're not focused on just one area. They're looking at a suite of products to allow them to solve really the problem of the distribution center.
Last question. It's related to the previous question. You might have already answered it, but like if you go to Modex, what are you watching, or what do you think has the potential to really make a difference in tomorrow's warehouses, whether it's software or mechanical?
Yeah, I mean, I think software mechanical are definitely a part of it, but what we're really looking at, it's not there yet, and it's going to be years before it is humanoids, right? You've got agility, you've got I'm blanking, you got Aptronic, and you got some others that are out there, Figure AI, that are all working on these humanoids or general purpose robots. They each kind of have their own niche they're trying to solve. Some are focused on solving the simple things, some are focused on solving the more complex things. But there's a very big focus right now on humanoids and how that can be used in the distribution center, starting off with simple tasks, but expanding into more and more complex tasks. So we're looking forward to seeing the pilots that start popping up and the opportunities that we start seeing where it's like, hey, that could be a good opportunity for a humanoid. And that kind of plays into what I was talking about earlier of now you have a singular technology that can solve a multitude of different purposes, whether it's tote removal, whether it's piece picking, whether it's replenishing, whether it's, picking a case. That humanoid could be one technology to solve all those different problems. Unloading, loading, it's really limitless. So that's what we're focused on. We're seeing it grow at Modex. I know we'll see some of those companies at Modex this year. So that would be my answer to what I see making a difference in tomorrow's warehouse.
That's fascinating. To be honest, I don't know anything about that space, and I tend to think that I know a lot about our space. So when I'm at Modex, I'm going to be checking that out.
Yeah.
Jordan, thank you. That's all the time we have today. A special thanks to my guest, Jordan Frank from Zion Solutions Group, and thank you for joining. I hope you'll be back for our next episode. And finally, be sure to go to nextgensupplychainconference.com and enter your email address for updates about NextGen 2024. We have a date. We'll be back in Chicago in October, and we're planning another great event. For Talking Materials Handling and the NextGen Conference, I'm Bob Treblecock. Jordan, thanks so much. I learned a lot today.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Talking Materials Handling is produced by Modern Materials Handling and Peerless Media. You can find Talking Materials Handling on mmh.com, on iTunes under SC247, or just Google SC247 Podcasts. We're on all the popular podcast platforms. For more information, be sure to visit mmh.com, and we hope you'll join us again for our next episode.